Hello and welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, the weekly bridge to the future of the piano tech community. I'm David Anderson.
And I'm Eathan Jenney. And we're here to ask great questions, and then we'll shut up and listen to some of the authorities, experts, and most outstanding personalities in our little world of pianos.
So, put on your best set of headphones and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. I know folks are still streaming in to the room here on Zoom. We're seeing folks out there on social media, Facebook, YouTube, so on and so forth, Instagram now, Twitter. Keep an eye out for some links that we'll put in the chat so that you can join us directly on the Zoom call, and it will be a pleasure to have you join us. As always, we'll take a few minutes to get started. Really excited about our guest today, who I'll introduce momentarily. But we like to take a minute to transition, get people settled, get set up, and thank you for coming and joining. A little bit up front about what you're joining today. As we set the context here, this is Piano Tech Radio Hour. And what we do here is we meet every Saturday, pretty much, to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. They include manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano tech. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more meaningful world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters that live in your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, this Saturday program, for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, and you can also get all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area, 4 years worth of content. You can join that using bit.ly/join-PTRH, bit.ly/PTRH. Now, a little explanation of my background here, and then I'll plug some of our other projects. I'm in Pacifica, California right now, which is slightly outside of the San Francisco area. Beautiful coastal town. There's a little coffee house here, and the ocean is right to my side. People surfing out there. A wonderful, beautiful day. A little fog off the water. And I happen to be visiting the Palo Alto area for about 3 weeks right now. And you might be interested to know I'm having chances to meet up with our good friend Larry Lobel, who's been involved with Piano Technicians Masterclasses, I think, from our very first lecture back in 2017. A nice, loyal fan of the radio hour. He's taught some Masterclasses himself. An all-around good guy. Had a couple chances to meet up with him while I'm here. We visited Skywalker Sound, George Lucas's personal sound production facility. We visited Sonoma State University, where he is the key piano technician on staff there. A beautiful performance arts venue. We've been to Callahan Piano, a renowned piano rebuilder out this way. We've been to DC Piano, a piano shop that does everything from the most basic spinet to the grandest grand piano. They do rebuilding and sales. We're going to go to Reference Recordings here just momentarily, a classic recording studio that is worth checking out. So what I'll be doing is gathering some content while I'm here, and what's worth sharing I'll bring to the program. So I have a lot of fun with this stuff. Before we introduce our guests, just want to highlight some of the other stuff that's going on with us. Make sure you check out our podcast, pianotechradio.com, the Radio Hour podcast. We release archival episodes and newer episodes with audio only, and it's becoming quite popular. And you also want to check out our blog, pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com. If you're curious what's in our member area, masterclass content is really high-end knowledge. We release some of that knowledge in blog posts, usually images and text, show you how to do something that you might not have known how to do or refresh your skills. And if you like what you read on that blog, you can come and subscribe and check out the private member area content. Yeah, just check us out on our socials as well. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and beyond, and you'll find us. All right, let's get to the show. Let's introduce our guest today for Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's Mila Henry, a conductor, pianist, and music director with a versatile career spanning folk operas, rock musicals, reimagined classics, hailed as a stalwart contributor to the contemporary opera scene by Opera Her 2023 to 2024 season includes conducting works like The Old Man and the Sea and The Merry Widow, music directing The Hunt, and performing with Brooklyn Art Song Society and Counter Induction. She continues as head of music for the American Opera Project Composers and the Voice Program. Her conducting credits include productions such as Letters That You Will Not Get, Magdalene, La Cenerentola, forgive my pronunciation, and Hansel and Gretel, that one I can handle. As a music director, she has led works like Words on the Street and Early Decision, and served as a band leader for Adrienne Danrich's Love and Trouble. Mila has played pivotal roles in developing new works and has been a repetiteur and principal pianist for numerous productions. Mila has collaborated extensively with organizations such as the American Opera Project, Beth Morrison Project, and Prototype. She holds degrees from the Manhattan School of Music and Elizabethtown College and is based in New York. Known as a Jill of all trades for her multi-instrumental work with Opera Cowgirls, Mila's recordings are available online. All right, let's dive in, Mila. And sorry for any switching between the pronunciation of your name.
No worries. My parents cursed me. It's okay.
Your parents, what were they thinking? Well, I have to say, you may have noticed my first name, Eathan, has an A after the E. That is not how you're supposed to spell it. So my parents could not find out. They just said, I will throw an A in there. We'll figure it out. But yeah, it's great to have you on Piano Tech Radio Hour. We love having unique folks like yourself that kind of carve your own path as a creative person, which is kind of more and more just what you have to do today in the creative arts, is just forge your own path. And I just would love to give a little bit of a background for the listeners here and the viewers today of where did this all come from? You know, were you a young musician? Were you prodigious? Was you a late bloomer? What's your background with music, and how did you get started?
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for having me here today. It's a real treat. I started piano when I was 5. I think probably many pianists did, and so that's when it all began. And I studied like a good little music student, for many years through elementary school, middle school onwards, and I also grew up in a very musical and theatrical family, so all types of music were always being played, jazz, R&B, Broadway musicals, classical music, symphonies, everything, musical theater in particular. And on my dad's side of the family, there were a lot of actors involved. And when I was in middle school, I started looking for a way to kind of put my skills to use. And I started playing for choirs at middle school, starting in 6th grade. And that sort of blossomed from there. I played for show choirs and concert choirs and high school choirs all through high school. And then started balancing that with playing for the high school musicals and then playing for musicals during the summer at a local church. And, really gaining as much experience as I could through college and then through grad school. And I also played percussion when I was in high school and college. And so that gave me a lot of opportunities, as well as good rhythm, playing with concert band and percussion ensemble and all of that. So I was sort of just soaking up as many musical opportunities as I could, particularly collaborative ones. I even did a little acting in our community theater youth group when I was in high school. So I was, starting to see all sides of putting a musical work or a theatrical work together from a young age.
So yeah, that's wonderful. It just sounds like a rich youth packed with musical experiences and opportunities. We had spoke before our recording here about how you kind of just knew that you just kind of assumed you were going into a musical career, a musical life. What was that like? How early did that occur to you? And I guess, how did the family integrate with that? You know, was it a very supportive kind of production, or
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. So I don't remember a time when I couldn't play the piano, or where I sort of didn't have that as part of my life. You know, I think actually even before I was 5, my mom says that I sat down at the piano with a friend of hers, and you know, I don't remember that so much, but it was maybe there before kind of the official start. And I was very lucky that, you know, both of my parents were huge arts fans, and my dad's side of the family had a lot of artists as well. So I grew up seeing being an artist as, you know, a very likely and given scenario, and having 2 half-brothers and my father and aunts and uncles that each went into the arts in their own way. I had an aunt that also did a lot of opera accompanying, particular, and would hear those stories. And my dad did a lot of regional theater and all of that. So if anything, they were overly supportive. My mom would say she's a great audience member, so that was more her contribution to the arts. But art was, you know, definitely bared a lot of strength on my dad's side of the family. And yeah, I think, you know, in 10th grade, I did a report on being a photographer purposely because I wanted to explore a career that was outside of music for, you know, one assignment. But I never really considered anything other than music, at least not very seriously. And it just felt like the path that made sense for me to take, because I had this skill set. I, you know, grew up playing the piano. I had done all these different types of activities. And so that's just the one I followed. And I think as I got older, particularly in college and grad school, you know, I started to learn a lot more about collaborative work, that I didn't have to be a solo pianist all by myself, but that I could, you know, make a living working with others in that way. And so that was very exciting to learn about different roles, like being a vocal coach or a repetiteur or rehearsal pianist or a pit pianist, and how some music directors did that from the piano. And so there was a whole world that felt attainable based on kind of the experiences I had seen growing up.
Wonderful. I'm curious with your relationship with the acoustic piano. We didn't talk about this independently, but of course I want to bring it in because the foundation of this program is the piano technicians meeting and nerding out about how the piano works and how to make it sound good. So I'm assuming you had acoustic piano, or maybe even multiple in the process of growing up, but maybe not. What's been your relationship with the acoustic piano?
Yeah, well, the piano I grew up with was a Kawai studio upright. And that's the piano I had all through high school, college, even well into my adult life. It's actually in storage right now with a friend. And I feel blasphemous saying this, but the piano in my apartment is actually a digital keyboard, just because it's a little easier in New York to kind of have some sound control and space control. So I currently have a Casio Privia SX7000, and it's in a color called Harmonious Mustard, so it adds a little sunshine to the living room. And that has been working out well, you know, as a practice tool and just something I can use at home. I'm lucky that living in New York and freelancing, I get to play a lot of different pianos, and so I still, you know, am honing my chops on an acoustic instrument when I'm kind of out working, which is, you know, a lot of the time. So the Kawai was really the instrument that I knew, and it had a really bright sound. But, you know, I also love Yamahas for their reliability and Steinways for their grandness. And I have to say, the keyboard I have now gave me a sostenuto pedal, which I did not have on the Kawai. So if anything, that's one small upgrade, even though I'm working digitally when I'm at home.
Yeah, I mean, there's some different topics emerge as relevant depending on the people I'm talking to at any given time. I mean, one is the concept of the collaborative pianist, which you brought up. which it wasn't. I mean, it makes sense. It's actually not a term that's been in my vocabulary or common parlance very often, just given my domain. But just the last couple of episodes, actually, we've had people who are, very ingrained in that type of work, and the term has come up quite a bit. And it is kind of, I've made the comment before, but I'll make it again. It's not an easy role to fill. It takes a specific type of personality, it takes specific skills and talents, and to be able to just, it's really support, right? It's supportiveness, or even just if you're playing with a group, the ability to contribute, to be able to be there when you're needed, to be able to have things under your fingers and ready to go, or to shift in directions, especially with vocalists and things like that. That's a wonderful path. And then the other topic that's coming up is, I'm sure you would love to have a acoustic piano in your space, right? If you could, you're in New York.
Oh, yes.
We discussed you're in, what did you say, the East Village or something like that, which is
in the East Village. Yeah.
one of those places that's been around long enough to get more and more crowded. And so there's not a lot of space, but I think this concept of hybrid pianos is something that needs to become, I think piano technicians like myself who do appreciate the acoustic instrument and it's part of our livelihood, to really embrace the growth of that domain where you could have a piano that has physical strings, and soundboard and keys and these things that are more organic and provide a little bit more nuance, but also has some sort of way that you could play it without other people hearing, right? Or that you can integrate it with a MIDI device, or that you can, put other sounds through it and play it. So I feel like this, as I look at the way the industry is going, I feel like that's a great domain where it probably needs to go further into compact pianos, light pianos, and ones that are hybrids where you get the acoustic, you actually get the actual acoustic emulation, not emulation, but you also have the ability to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you come across any keyboard instruments that you've worked with, like along the way? Like you're a conductor, and you work with groups and do collaborations. If you run across harpsichords or glockenspiels, your percussions, or just sort of like interesting other keyboard instruments along the way?
Yes, actually. So I started playing percussion in high school because all of my friends were joining the marching band, which I guess tells you the crowd that I was hanging out with. And
cool
I said, why? Yeah, the cool kids, clearly. And so I wanted to join, and I was like, but I don't want to march. I don't want to be that cool. So they said, well, you can join the pit. You already know the piano. It'll be easy. And so I picked up, keyboard percussion instruments really quickly. So I was introduced to xylophones and marimbas and glockenspiels and vibes. And really, it's funny going back to the question about considering another career. I didn't consider another career, but there was a time my senior year of high school where people said, oh, are you going to major in piano or percussion? So there was kind of this other passion that I had musically that I really developed. And then that expanded to, full percussion instruments as well. So that was my first sort of alternate keyboard, I guess. Besides, when I was growing up, my dad also played the piano, and he was, loved to write his own charts and play along with the drum tracks, and was influencing me in that way as well. So I grew up with a lot of, Casio and Yamaha and sort of roll-in keyboards at the ready. And then when I graduated from grad school and started working in New York and developing my bag of tricks, first I picked up the ukulele, which was obviously not a keyboard instrument, but I still had a melodica that I had from a kid. And so now I play that a little bit in a band called the Opera Cowgirls, where I play everything but the keyboard, but I play a lot of keyboard adjacent instruments. So in addition to melodica, we have accordion. Sometimes, glockenspiel comes out, going back to those percussion skills. and auto harp, which, again, it has strings, but has the chords that you can tie in. So yeah, a lot of tiny instruments, tiny keys is what we say with that group.
But you had a recording maybe we might want to share. Would you
sure.
like to share
Yeah.
from your computer?
Yeah, let's see if I can do this. So this is an example of the band I mentioned called the Opera Cowgirls. We like to say it's where Grand Opera meets the Grand Ole Opry. We have a website called operacowgirls.com, and there are a few clips on that site as well as on YouTube. But one of our sort of more professional looking videos is a music video we made a couple years ago to the song O Mio Babino Caro from Johnny Schicchi. And I'm not playing keyboard in this one, but I am playing ukulele. And we have some other audio and video up online too, if you're curious. We like to call this our Barbie O Mio Babino, although we made it a couple years before that movie.
All right,
Great.
really
so
fun.
I'm sure, yeah, just how it was intended, I'm sure.
It's exactly, yeah. How does an idea like this, well, gosh, how does a band come together? I mean, is it, do you say this name is so great, we just have to do it? Or, this concept is so great, we just have to do it? Or, did you have some other groups of these people as well? And, how does this all come together?
Yeah, totally. So a brief history, the group was founded by a friend and mezzo-soprano named Caitlin McKechnie. She's in that video there. And she was in a bar in New York, over a decade ago, and was with some friends. And they said, hey, like, why don't you open for our band one night? And she said, oh, I sing opera. And they're like, that's fine. And so it sort of emerged, out of a dive bar experience. And at first the group started with 3 singers and piano. And I had a friend who's now an Opera Cowgirls sort of honoree who brought me into the group when they were looking for a pianist. And so we started still with voice and piano, but we started to realize that being tied to the piano with an operatic voice, it still kind of kept it in like a classical sphere, no matter how many dive bars you were playing. If you were singing and, with a certain training against piano, you were still going to bring the audience kind of in more classically. So between that and the fact that pianos at dive bars are probably not the acoustic pianos that anybody wants to seek out, we said, what if we remove the piano entirely? And thus, my ukulele skills were brought into the fore, as were basically any other tiny instrument that I could add. So I play a mix of melodica and auto harp and accordion and bells and desk bells, which are pretty fun. And what else? Hand percussion, which goes back to, when I was playing percussion growing up. And whatever tiny instrument we can find. We do have a keytar. It comes out on rare occasions, but we're actually going to be working it into the mix again. So we've got that. But largely acoustic folk instruments. And everybody in the band, although not evident in this video, everybody plays an instrument when we're doing live shows. So Sarah, as you saw, was playing cello. Caitlin was playing guitar. And Jess and Maria go from mandolin to dulcimer to a good old egg shaker and tambourine. So we have a lot of fun putting it together, and definitely removing the piano in this case kind of helped break open the barrier a little bit, between classical music and country music and, everything in between. So it brings a lot of people in. We have a lot of fun doing it.
Nice. That's fun. Yeah, I know some opera singers too, and it's like, you can't not sing opera if you're an opera singer when you sing.
Yeah.
It's like it's like how to sing properly and with volume. It comes out.
And I will say we do a few country hits as well. So we and when we do those, obviously they're sung in a country twang.
Right.
And they leave the opera on the shelf. But when you're singing opera or singing something that was written to be sung a certain way, that's the voice that you need to use.
Yeah. You just recently, again, we were speaking before we're recording here today, but you've just been to Los Angeles recently, right? To do some performing and executing some pieces there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was out there for 3 weeks, working on a show called Magdalene, which collectively had 14 women composers that were all setting poetry by Marie Howe. And the work was co-created by Danielle Viratella and Zoe Asia Moore. Zoe also directed, and Danielle also sang in the production. And it was produced by Beth Morrison Projects, which is a company that I work with a lot here in New York, and that also has some LA connections, including one with REDCAT, which is where we performed the piece. So it was a 75-minute chamber opera with 13 individual songs, and then music by the 14th composer that was sort of used interstitially to weave it all together. And then performed by 1 singer and 1 dancer. And I was conducting it, music directing and conducting, so no piano involved in the performance, although I covered a couple of the rehearsals. And the score featured string quartet and harp, along with some electronic tracks ranging from ocean waves and pre-recorded hums and ahs to a really upbeat electronic synth track that was used in one of the songs as well. And for that one, I was on a click track, which, I was using headphones to stay with the metronome while everybody was playing live. So yeah, a real mix of genres and styles and music. And it certainly is one of my favorite pieces, and I think encompasses a lot of what I like about contemporary opera, because it just weaves a little bit of everything together.
Yeah, so I'm curious about your path towards conducting and how you got so engaged there. You started as a piano player. Clearly, you did a lot of different things. You got the rhythmic background from percussion and various groups, but somehow you started to carve out a niche as someone who's a conductor. And how exactly did that evolve?
Yeah, totally. So I guess conducting was something I came into really from the bench. I didn't seek it out or kind of grow up in a way that said, I want to be a conductor, I want to lead orchestras, that's the path I want to take. I was really approaching it more from a music directing standpoint, and growing up and, listening to a lot of Broadway musicals and sort of craving that environment, I really saw the music director as somebody that was leading from the piano, but, that also needed to kind of know how to lead the band and conduct. But I was definitely viewing it from that perspective. And as I started doing more and more collaborative work, particularly post-grad school, I was doing a lot of leading of new workshops and leading from the piano and, cueing and kind of conducting from the piano bench. And so it evolved in that sense. I knew that when I was in school, I knew that it was going to be a good skill to have in my toolbox. And so I studied conducting for a year in undergrad and in grad school, and certainly had to, learn the repertoire and learn about preparing scores and baton technique in all of that. But I never really studied it like as a major per se. And then, as I said, when I was leading a lot from the bench as a freelancer, I started seeing like, oh, well, okay, this is a skill that I could keep developing. I started seeing other colleagues and peers in similar positions, particularly seeing more and more women conductors resonated with me, and realizing that was a skill that, not only was a party trick, but actually something that I could really do and really develop. And do well. And so it became something that I started to seek more and more. And I've also had the ability to observe a lot of wonderful conductors in my career. And I tried to kind of absorb as much by watching as well as by learning. And, I had to also settle into the maybe perception of the personality of a conductor. That was something that I had to own a little bit more, and also how I can take that personality but also add my own. And so I really try to lead very supportively, very collaboratively, very clearly. And now I do a mix of sort of all three passions that I mentioned, from conducting and music directing, but also still a lot of playing. And as I say, sometimes all of that at the same time. So I still do music directing from the piano, but also from the podium. And it's a way of leading that I really enjoy and have kind of come into over my career.
Now, Mozart in the Jungle, is that about a conductor? Is that right? I feel like I've watched a little bit of that.
There is, yes, actually, I finally watched that on Amazon, I think last year. There is, the role of a conductor in that, rumored to be modeled on Dudamel, but a fictional character in the show itself. But that show does take place in the New York music scene, with a lot of soap opera fiction, sort of woven in.
Fun to watch. I remember seeing a handful of episodes, but it's particularly fun if you're a musician in New York. I'm sure, especially if you're a conductor.
Yes.
Yeah. Right there.
Oh yeah, there were a lot of cameos I recognized, and certainly places and venues, and there were certainly things about jumping from one gig to the next that felt very true.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad I knew that. So, if you don't mind speaking about it, so people have different approaches, and you feel free to share yours. How do you connect this, relate to approach being a female in some of these domains? Like you mentioned, you saw other female conductors and an increasing presence there, and that kind of piqued your interest. And how much do you think about that versus just kind of, I'm a musician, for my thing? Well, what's your approach?
Yeah, totally. I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, I don't think about it too much, to be honest, but I will say that I didn't start to see myself in that role until I saw others or worked alongside others, other peers, other friends and colleagues who are women who were conducting, where it kind of made me rethink how I wanted my career to evolve and take shape. So, and that was, I think, more subconscious than conscious, because I've gotten to work with a lot of wonderful conductors, many conductors who are men and who I greatly admire and, have learned from their way of leading a room. But it was interesting, and maybe it was just a point where I was in my career. I was kind of figuring out how I wanted to keep developing as an artist, and I think it was also realizing that it wasn't something I was going to wait, that I couldn't wait to be kind of appointed a conductor by someone older and wiser, that, there were many young women conductors in particular that were starting to develop the skill, and that I saw myself as, wait a second, maybe that's something I need to take charge of doing if I want to develop it more. So I think there was a turning point when I saw some close colleagues in that field that really made me realize that I could do it too. But at the same time, I really enjoy carving out my own kind of combination of conducting and playing and music directing, and not feeling like I want to go solely into that path, but really enjoying doing a mix of all three. So I guess I'm aware of, setting a good example and wanting to be a role model to others, and showing people that, it can be done, and whatever you're interested in doing can be attainable. So that's kind of the model I hope to put out there for all artists. But certainly I've got more involved with Maestra in particular this year, which is a group that benefits women and non-binary musicians in the music industry. And so being involved in a group like that has also, brought up my interest in wanting to be a good role model to young women artists.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm recollecting now that my mother finagled to have this wonderful musician give me piano lessons when I was in high school, who happened to also be a conductor. And there's a piano player and a conductor, and would do some conducting, maybe like as an alternate for like Chicago Symphony and things like this. And it's such a great skill to have, right? And it's such a unique role, and it's so cool that you've taken, like you said, you've taking the reins there, right? Because I feel like, I don't know, like you said, it's more of just an inspiration for anyone, like at some point at some point or multiple points in your life and your career, you've got to be like, good, this is me, this is what I'm doing. This is part of what I'm taking on. So I love that. Where do you see, what I wanted to ask next was just about New York City. I don't think we caught where you're from originally, and I love to just hear how the city of New York plays a role in your musicianship, your approach as an artist, and inspiration, collaborations, connections, all those types of things. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Philadelphia area. I say the area because I did a lot of jumping around when I was a kid. I was born in Camden, New Jersey, which is right across from Philly. I lived in Manayunk when I was very young, which is in Philadelphia, and then in Camden again. And then I really grew up in a small suburban town named Royersford, which is an hour northwest of Philadelphia. So Philly was sort of always my home city in a way. But I also grew up with family in New York City that I would visit, from when I was very young, and I would stay with cousins on the weekends. I had a half brother who still lives up in Hamilton Heights. And so New York was very attainable, and it was where school trips were and seeing shows and field trips and all of that. So I was very familiar with it, and I knew that I always wanted to land here to live and to work. And actually, when I finally moved to go to grad school at the Manhattan School of Music for my master's, like moving to New York was the easiest transition. It was sort of like, okay, great, now I'm home. It always felt like home. So yeah, and it's still, not far from where I grew up down in the Philadelphia area. So it's
The train and
always
the bus
been
are
accessible.
great.
And yeah, I'm a public transit person. I had to drive for 3 weeks when I was in LA, and it was great to remember that I still could, but I'm relieved to be toted around on public transit again.
Yeah. The Bolt bus, the Megabus, you done that? Did you ever do that?
Sometimes, yeah. I take the train a lot because my parents are in Camden, and so I wind up, taking New Jersey Transit all the way down nearly. But I know it's pretty easy. It's always amazes, I think, people who aren't from the East Coast, like how quickly you can get from state to state.
I don't know if they still do this, but I remember when I first
drive a lot.
moved to New York back in 2009, and maybe even sometimes before that, I forget exactly how it was doing it, but they had the dollar. It was, you could ride the bus for $1.
I remember that.
You got your ticket early enough. They had dollar tickets, and you could go to Philly or Washington D.C. or whatever from New York. I don't know if they do that anymore. But, I remember just, I'm going to go in a month or two or whatever.
Right, exactly. You had to sign up like well in advance. I do remember that.
Yeah, you had to be like the first to get the ticket. I love those. I have some connections with Philly too. And I went to Rutgers University, which is sort of halfway between New York and Philly.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I have some good friends that live in that area, and I don't know if you've ever gotten around to the Kensington Kinetic Sculpture Derby.
No.
You have to check
I'm not
this out.
familiar with that.
It's like, there are a few favorite things on the planet that I have, and this is one of them. The Kensington Kinetic Sculpture Derby.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Kensington and I forget, Fishtown area. It has been an upcoming area over the past several decades. They combine it with like an arts fair one weekend, usually in May. They've probably passed this summer already. And a nice little art fair, music, food, dance, and all that. But the real thing is the derby, and people construct contraptions out of bicycles and odd parts and whatever they want to get creative with, and then they do a little parade throughout Kensington. They do this little loop, and it's an obstacle course. Yeah, you do the cones and all this, and at the end of the obstacle course is a mud pit, and they've got these little bleachers they set up so you can stand and watch whether the various contraptions can make it through the mud pit or not. And of course, 90% of them can't, so people fall over in the mud and get all muddy. And it's a very fun, creative event. And the things that people build are we got to get all well. I've seen a flatbed truck, literally a flatbed truck with like 6 people on bicycles on top of the bed of the truck that are actually driving it forward to move it, like stuff like that.
Wow, that's wild. Yeah, Philly has a great art scene. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's very organic. I love it. But yeah, so you've had sort of it's been a role. It's played a role in your life since you can remember. New York has been there, and now you're kind of making your own place with it.
Yeah. Now I've been here almost 18 years. I mean, including grad school, which feels wild to say out loud. But and I was in Princeton for a few years, and even in that time, I was like commuting to New York always. So I feel like work and home always felt like in the Big Apple, so to speak.
Excellent. Well, we'll probably have to wrap up here in the next little bit, but I don't know how much you're planning and scheming for the future here. But what do you think about when you think about the next few years? Are there things that you're aiming to? I know you want to play on Broadway. I know that's a goal here.
As I said, I think it's I have many friends and colleagues who are in the Broadway scene, and I think it's just sort of like something 15-year-old me, would enjoy saying. But I'm also grateful for like all of the Broadway adjacent work that I've gotten to do. So sure, that would be a fun checkbox for sure, and I will love it if that happened one day. But it's a good question. I'm really at a point where I'm doing a lot of career analysis and saying, okay, I've done all these things. Like, what do I want to do with it? How do I want to continue to grow? Where do I want to go? What I've found is I really love working with young artists and composers and librettists, and kind of helping to bring new works to life. And so sometimes I think about the advantage of getting to do at a school or an institution or something where I can kind of use my experiences doing a lot of versatile works to show that not genre doesn't have to be cut and dry, and kind of how to approach different things using your own influences and styles and tools that you have, so you can make a career. So I've thought a little bit about that, and like maybe different ways of offering that perspective, and then continuing to build my own career, continuing to kind of lead more musical works. I've got some really great projects on the horizon the next couple years, and it's kind of fun to see how things fill in between, and just see where things lead. I think I'm lucky to have a lot of great connections, really strong network, and I'm grateful for that, and it keeps me busy. So certainly I'm taking advantage of those connections, and also thinking about what exciting ones might come up for the future.
Wonderful. Yeah. Sounds like saying yes to a lot of different things has been fruitful for you. Perhaps you'll have to get into saying no at some point soon, and that'll be the next step.
I know. Yeah. Oh, I've thought about that. Sometimes I think maybe I should just pick one thing. Maybe that would just simplify everything. We'll see. I'll stay open.
Tell us about, I know you mentioned this to me previously, but I don't think we got it in the session here. Tell us about this project that you said yes to. That sounds so wonderful. What a wonderful experience involving Wayne Shorter and Esperanza Spalding. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a few years ago, I guess in 2021 to 22. I got to be the rehearsal pianist for a show called Iphigenia, with music by Wayne Shorter and libretto by Esperanza Spalding, who was also performing in the work as one of the Iphigenias. It was directed by Liliana Blaine Cruz. And it had a few productions. It premiered on the East Coast, at a performance at the Kennedy Center, and then also went out to the West Coast. And I just covered the staging rehearsals during its development, before they brought in the Wayne Shorter Quartet and the orchestra. But it was really a eye-opening and enlightening project to get to do, to work with such formidable artists. I did get to meet Wayne briefly once over an iPhone, which was very special. And, also got to work alongside Esperanza Spalding in the room as she was performing and working and honing the libretto. So it was a really fantastic team. Clark Rundell was the conductor, and a really special group of people, and a special room to be in. So certainly a memorable project.
Yeah. Just to become aware that collaborations like that are going on, and then be invited to become a part of it is wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, how
yeah.
I forget how they found you. Was it like a reference, or I forget what the connection was?
Yeah, it was a reference. The producer, Kath Bretan, emailed me one day and said, we're putting together this project, and you were recommended to us to come in and play for the rehearsals. Would you be interested? And I read that email and said, yes, absolutely. It sounded, what an exciting room. And a reference and a recommendation, it goes a long way. I mean, I tell that to a lot of artists who are starting out their careers, always be nice, say yes to a lot of things, be open, and you never know where one connection is going to lead to the next, to the next, to the next. So I think that is half, if not more, of making a career in music, is just kind of the ability to keep building your network.
That's wonderful. All right, well, it's been a pleasure spending time with you today. I'm really just looking forward to seeing what's next for you, and I can foresee lots of wonderful things, about the dreams coming true and beyond. But where should we send people if they want to find out a little bit more on your website, some social media thing, a specific project? Where's the best place to send people?
Yeah, sure. So I have a website, milahenry.com, and that's probably the simplest way. I do keep my calendar really up to date, and active, I promise. So you won't go and read anything there from a few years ago. And I do have social media. I don't have any. It is. I know it takes time.
I mean, we're
I'm
not
already thinking about things to update,
right? I mean,
it's
bio. So many of us who do things, you have your website, there's things to put on there, but you have the time or anything.
Yeah. No, it's true, but it's important, but yeah, it's totally true. I am on social media. I don't have any professional accounts. My Instagram account is Mila Henry, just to help you out with the pronunciation. So it is set to private just to make sure that nobody's a robot. But if you find me there and say you listen to this interview, then I'm happy to offer that. But my website is definitely the best option. And then operacowgirls.com if you're curious after hearing a little bit about Grand Opera and the Grand Ole Opry.
Wonderful. I love the diversity of everything that you're doing. Only good can come from it. Well, I'll sign us off for now, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future. So this has been the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Mila for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting-edge instruction from piano industry and masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today for signing up just for this session individually, make your life more convenient. Subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, $16 a month. Get the recording of today's session in a member area, automatic registration for each week's news session. Sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh, bit.ly/joinptrh. And you should sure to check out our socials, look us up Piano Tech Masterclass and various variations, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Got a Substack blog where we're sharing really cool technical information mined from our archives of content. And our podcast at pianotechradio.com is really exploding. We've got global presence and reaching heights in the performing arts category of up to #1 sometimes, depending on the market, and the Apple iTunes. So tune into the Piano Tech Radio. Make sure you subscribe. And thanks again. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Remember that you can catch us live online every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. Go to pianotechradio.com to register so you can interact live and ask questions of our guests.
See you next week.